Hey guys, it's Miss Lloyd, and I'm here to talk to you about Frederick Douglass, the timed writing on prompt number 1. I'm going to do my best not to cough through this, so I apologize if I do. Um, but what I want to do is I want to show you uh, how the papers looked. I'm showing you the range 2 to 8, and I'm giving you just some example paragraphs from this so that you can see what it is that um, on the whole, what I saw, everything is fixable. That's the good news. But what I saw is prompt number 1 was the most problematic out of the 2 prompts. People either had difficulty demonstrating how their quotations demonstrated his value, whatever it is that he valued most, and then showing how that caused him great pain. I saw people telling me that say he valued education, and then once he learned how to read and how to start deciphering the subtle differences and sometimes not so subtle difference between society's views on slaveholders and slaves, that that caused him pain. And then that's all you guys said. It didn't continue on with what was it that was most painful about it. What were the elements of the pain? You needed to get into more description of that. Why was it so terrible versus it just caused him pain, period. And so you needed to take it a little bit further. I also saw, excuse me, in case of people who talked about valuing freedom, you talked about how the value of freedom caused him pain, but in order to talk about that, what you need to do is then you need to also discuss after he's free, how is it that it still causes him pain? Because if you look at it in terms of education, it's once he gets the education, then it causes him the pain. You just addressed the freedom before he became free. I don't think anybody, I could be lying, but I don't think I am. I don't think I saw anybody who talked about how freedom was still troublesome for him afterward. And so that's something that we need to be discussed. In this one, you were better off organizing this chronologically or by significant idea. And you could demonstrate, especially if you're talking about education, talking about his transformation from ignorance into knowledge, because education was the most prevalent one. I saw some of you try to take on 2 values. Please don't do that. Number 1, if they're asking for the most significant value or what it is that he valued most, they're looking for 1. If you do 2, what you're doing is you are sort of splitting the difference. You're trying to make sure that you cover your bases in case they don't agree with yours. It doesn't matter if they agree with it or not, as long as you prove it. So you need to make sure that if it says most, it means 1, and then you need to do that one really well rather than just split your time. Okay, so let's look at a few of these and see what it is that I saw most frequently. I have typed these exactly as they were written. I've kept the misspelled words and the incorrect punctuation where it is. On the whole, it's not a big deal if you misspell a word. It's not a big deal if you miss your punctuation, unless it is repetitive and unless it is something that detracts from the reading of the piece. So let's look at this too. As Frederick Douglass gained what he most valued, education, he grew more and more tortured by his life as a slave. Now, on the face of it, there's nothing wrong with this thesis statement. You should not have a semicolon here, and tortured needs to be spelled correctly. But on the whole, this thesis statement is perfectly fine, perfectly valid. What we're missing is all the rest of the introduction. We need to have that universal statement, and we need to have the tag statement so that you're guiding your reader into what it is that you're supposed to be talking about. So that's the first thing. Keep in mind that universal statement, what that's going to do for you is that's going to give you another place to show insight. And so you need to make sure that you include that. Then we get to our first body paragraph. Frederick Douglass seeks knowledge and education above all else because it restores to him some of the humanity he lost as a slave. Again, nothing wrong with this sentence. It's fine as an assertion. Our troubles really begin here. I lived in Master Hugh's family about 7 years. During this time, I succeeded in learning how to read and write. That quotation has been dropped into this paper. There is no context. There is no embedding. That right there is an automatic trigger in the minds of the AP readers that this is a lower half essay. You have got to embed your quotations, and you've got to condense them down so that you can put nice, neat little nuggets of information within your own sentence. Otherwise, you're allowing Frederick Douglass to hijack your paper, and I don't think you want to do that. This needs to be your paper in which you show what Frederick Douglass is saying. You're not letting him take over. So this right here is a giant no-no. Then we get to the commentary. Frederick Douglass is so persistent in his thirst for knowledge that he teaches himself to read and write despite the harsh repercussions for a slave learning to do these things. This right here is summary. There's not any analysis of the quotation that's going on in front of it. And this is why this is a 2, because the paper continues on that exact same way. Now, my thinking here is the problem lies in the quotation choice. There's not really anything to say about this quotation. There's not a lot of language that you can look at. It's not a moment where you can really dig deep and pull some analysis from here. There is an element of rhetorical analysis in this this particular prompt, and you guys have had experience with that with Ms. Bennett. You need to be able to analyze that quotation, pull out the pertinent information, and then take it and turn it into your argument. And that's not what's happening here. So I think this person just fell victim to poor quote choice and didn't have anywhere to go with it. So that's what a 2 looks like. Now, there were some 4s that did also look like this, but they managed to eke out a little bit of analysis. So keep that in mind. I am showing you a 4, but there are different issues with this 4. Okay, so here's a 4. Sometimes the thing that we desire most in life is the same thing that can cause us the most harm. In Frederick Douglass's autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, this idea of acquiring one's desires and ironically being caused more pain because of it is prevalent throughout. Now, first off, we've got to get rid of the we. We've got to get rid of the us. This first person brings you into your paper, and you don't want to do that. It also alienates your reader. Your reader is not part of that we or that us, and so therefore you're giving them an opportunity to disagree with you. You need to make this universal, because at that point your reader is included, and you want your reader to be able to look at this and go, okay, I get it, and I agree. So don't alienate them right off the bat. Then we get to this thesis statement. We're missing the tag. The tag's sort of included in here. Keep that a separate sentence. We get to this thesis statement, and the thesis statement is why this is a 4. The rest of the paper is really pretty solid. But in this thesis statement, what is left out is what he actually desires. It talks about acquiring one's desires, but it never tells us what Frederick Douglass's desire is. What is it that he wanted most? And what is it that he valued most? And because of this, your paper has nowhere to go. The thesis statement, think of it if it's in terms of the body, the thesis statement is the spinal column. It is the whole thing, is the one thing that holds your entire body together. It is the one thing that holds your entire paper together. So if your thesis statement is not solid, you cannot score an upper level paper. And if your thesis statement does not address the prompt, at least explicitly, and answer the prompt, then you're also not going to score an upper level paper. The rest of that body paragraph is fine. You try to salvage it from there. And the body paragraphs are actually the reason that this is a 4 and not a lower score, because there is some rebound, but the thesis statement is the problem here. And I will post these online, the documents, so that you can look at them in more detail. Okay, here is an 8. And since the 8 was quite lengthy, I didn't give you the intro paragraph as well. This is just a body paragraph from the 8. And what I may do is I may go back and add the intro paragraph so that when I post this online, you can look at that too. So the 8, Douglass so highly valued mental liberation from the psychological confines of slavery because he believed it would later aid him to be physically unbound, as conveyed by his continuous pursuit of education, regardless of threats from his masters. His firm emphasis on obtaining an education derived from his understanding of wit, the white man's power to enslave the black man. Douglass's realization of the cause of racial stratification led him to believe that obtaining the same amount of mental ability as his enslavers would free him from slavery, directly noted as being, quote, the pathway from slavery to freedom. This conveys that Douglass desired for liberation and therefore highly valued freedom of his mind in order to achieve escape from his confining lifestyle. This value drives Douglass, and its importance is conveyed by his resilience in the face of harsh threats and denial of access to education from his masters. This is very well written, and you can tell that the person who wrote this has a strong foundation in vocabulary and has a natural lyrical writing style. So this is sort of an innate ability that's coming out here. What you're also seeing is you're seeing some high-level thought. We're talking about the psychological confines of slavery, and she talks about the mental, hang on, where is it? Freedom of the mind, right here. So while it seems like he's talking both about, or she is talking both about education and freedom, what she's actually doing is she's connecting those two and tying them together in freedom of the mind. And so this, if you're absolutely dead set, you're going to deal with two things. This is the way that you've got to do it. You've got to connect them down at the core level so that it makes sense. And it looks like you're just discussing the one thing. This is not perfect. And that's what you guys need to know about 8s and 9s. They are not perfect, but they are written in such a way that you look at it and go, oh, okay. And oh my gosh, I've got to show this to somebody because this is really good. You've got incredibly high level thought. You've got well embedded quotations. I did take out, this person also did do the citations at the end. I took them out because I just didn't want them to be a distractor here on the page. And the one thing that I would say is there is a little repetitiveness in some of the vocabulary in terms of slavery, enslaver, that sort of thing. So you do have that. The reason this paper rises to the level of an 8 instead of a 9 is because at the end of the paper, which you guys can't see at this point, it does get a little repetitive. And so that's really what keeps it from being a 9. But you can see this is an excellent example for you guys to look at and try to model after. Now, this does not mean take this and copy it, but you do need to look at it for inspiration when you do your own. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to come and see me, talk to me, ask me. I'm here to help. I will post this all online so that you can have it, and we will go from there. So good luck on your rewrites. Have a good weekend.